treatment of players was not great in general. I think we look at this and because we're taking in the Bulls part of it right now, we're probably not extending it to the rest of the league. I would think outside of Boston and LA or Detroit and places like that this was sort of like the way things went in a lot of different cities in the NBA. When before all the player empowerment and everything, Jordan had a big hand in that. Magic and Larry had a big hand in that. But I would assume this is the way a lot of basketball stuff worked. Scotty's contract. I think Dennis held out at some point to start that season. Mike was on a bad contract until his last 2 years. So that really jumped out at me. I would say, a lot of the Dennis stories were illuminating.
Yeah.
Him and Scotty, just their background and how they were sort of like plucked out of obscurity as basketball players, like they were basically adults before they were really basketball players and kind of more athletes than anything. So that, while I knew it, it's different to see the footage and to hear them talk about it. And I guess the Jerry Krause stuff has really been heavy too. So those are the threads that I've been following. The Jordan stuff is sort of like, I know most of it, but it is nice to see how candid he has been in these interviews, even up to last night where he's like laying all of his feelings about Isaiah and the Pistons out and just like not holding back anything. So it's been really nice just to see everybody like they committed to doing this and they really committed. Like they really are like all in and you can tell they're not holding anything back. So that's the good thing that while it's sort of a little buttoned up, when they actually interview the people, like they give us everything.
Yeah, they absolutely have.
Are there any points of this that you feel like because we have nothing else to talk about that they're being overcovered? Like we're making too much of this thing or too much of this, of any of those things you mentioned or anything you've seen in these first 4 parts at all?
Probably, Jerry Krause, like the villain angle of Jerry Krause has gotten huge. So there's that. Jordan as a teammate, and we might see a little bit more of that coming soon. There's been a lot of conversations about Jordan as a teammate, calling guys out or maybe being physical with people, but that's sort of how sports are. Even when you're not at the level where you're making millions of dollars, like I've definitely been in practice where dudes are like playing the play and getting in your way and being disruptive because they want to be starting, and y'all end up getting in fights or almost getting in fights.
Oh yeah,
and that was high school. So that's probably been overblown a little bit. And obviously, Scotty's contract became a big topic of discussion that after that first week. He wouldn't made a lot of money after he left Chicago, but that first, what was it, 7 years, $18 million, that was the biggest conversation for leading up even up to last night. Everybody was talking about Scotty.
What were your thoughts on that, DeAntae, with the contract? Because you heard a lot of people saying his agent did a bad job, blaming him. I think there's a lot of ways you can look at this, right? Like in terms of the fact that he comes from the South, comes from very impoverished situation. And I kind of understand why he signed that contract. However, he's a grown man and his owner did tell him not to sign that contract. So it's hard for me to really, I feel bad for Scotty. And don't get me wrong, a lot of players were done wrong, but he did sign that deal.
Well, I'll start with saying that I don't know that I necessarily believe everything that Reinsdorf says about the way the negotiations
That's
went.
fair. That's fair.
If he was, because while Krause has been painted as like the bad guy through all of this, none of that happens unless Reinsdorf signs off on it.
True story.
And I think a lot of that from him was probably, cost cutting and saving money. You don't want to have to pay Scotty and Mike $30 million and pay Dennis $20 or something like that. I think that they were looking at it saying, maybe we have 1 or 2 years more of this team. Do we want to have, this crazy salary and, do we want to pay all of these guys what they're going to be worth after they hit this free agency after that season? So there's that. And Scotty, I think when you really dig into his background, being from a family that big, and seeing what real poverty was like and sort of being in a situation that he never really envisioned himself being in, I could see you sort of wanting to, grab all you can at that moment before, like even if we look at him as like this super athlete or whatever, in his mind, he's still the same person that he probably was at that point. He signed a deal in 91. He's probably still the same person that he was in, 85. He might be
Right.
looking at this thing as fleeting, like I could get one injury and this whole dream will be over. So, if you secure $17 million to take care of your family, like I totally understand it. The onus isn't necessarily on ownership to, renegotiate that, but they totally could have. I mean,
Right.
there's a whole stint where Mike isn't even on the team. Scotty's your best player in 94. Maybe pay him as your best player then to empower him, and help him lead. But they decided not to do that. And I'm sure there were conversations that he had with them about the money before they got to 97, 98. Because in the documentary, they say that contract sort of got old very quickly. And once TV came into it, the money was different.
Absolutely right.
So Par 4 kind of gave off that the triangle sort of unlocked Scottie Pippen and was one of the key things that helped bring him to this next all-star level. And today when I was watching the jump, Tracy McGrady said that he didn't think that was primarily responsible for that. He thinks it was more of a natural progression because going into that time, he's heading into his fourth year. Usually your third, fourth year, if you're going to become a star, you kind of figure it out. So being that you guys kind of saw this happen in real time, I mean, what do y'all think? Do y'all think that this was was it the triangle offense that really unlocked Scottie? Was it just, his development? Was it both? Like, how did that go at that time?
I'm gonna
I think
let
you might
DeAntae
be
say, yeah.
aging me up a little bit. I'm
I wasn't around at all
well,
yet, so
I'm 33, but I did not know what the triangle was in 91. I'm not going to pretend like
Right.
I knew, defensive coverages, or I was like writing out plays when I was 6 years old. I'm not going to pretend that at all. I think it's maybe a little bit of both, because the other part that they covered was Doug Collins having an entire offense where every play led to Michael Jordan finishing with the ball, whereas Phil and the Triangle and Tex Winter, it's a little bit more cohesive. And Scottie wasn't necessarily the type of guy who's going to say, give me the ball, I'm going to go get mine. That was never really the way he played. When you look back, even though he was capable of scoring more, when you look back at stats or whatever, there were a lot of games where he would have 15 points and take 9 shots or something like that. He wasn't necessarily a gunner like that. And I think that he was sort of like more predisposed to be a facilitator and a point guard. And I could see how the progression in terms of, going through those Detroit years, learning how to play with Mike, learning from Mike, and then also having this offense that sort of tailors to you at the right time. Like I think both of those were sort of, like a perfect marriage.
So I happen to agree with DeAntae. I think it's a lot of that. And I also felt that the opportunity DeAntae talked about before, which is the 93-94 season when Jordan left, and 95, being the man on that team, even though he was crazy underpaid. I remember as a Knicks fan just still how good that team was with Pip leading them. And I think he was second in MVP in 93-94, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they still made it to the Eastern Conference
Yeah,
Finals.
still made it to Eastern Conference Finals. And I mean, I'm a Knicks fan. I know we got lucky with the Hubert Davis call there, but they kind of owed us the year before.
They were getting at you in this part.
Yeah. So I think that experience actually took his game to another level. DeAntae took him to that really next level where he could learn to lead, and he really learned how to play without Mike. And so that did a lot for him there.
Maybe it was kind of a generational thing, but I saw a lot of people on Twitter actually complaining about that. Like, oh, that's not basketball. You can't do that. This and that. Where, back then that was kind of what you had to do to stop somebody like this. Was
the Pistons, I think, were in their own lane in terms of like how physical they were. Like nobody was doing to people what they were doing to people.
No, but at the same time, it's like, I even remember playing in parks. If you got flagrant fouled, you kind of just got flagrant fouled. That was part of it.
Nah. But there's some things where you and DeAntae, you know this too from playing ball. If somebody crossed the line, you had
Oh yeah,
we had to
no,
do
no.
something. You
like
know what I
when
mean?
you jump and somebody push you in your back or
Yeah.
something like that, like,
Yeah.
while you're in the air, like nah.
No,
Nah.
there's a line for sure, but I think that the sensibilities of today is that almost anything is a foul. Like I noted this on Twitter where Michael Jordan was saying that, oh, just keep playing or whatever he said, just don't complain or whatever it was. I'm flubbing up what he actually said, but that's essentially
Something like that to Scotty, yeah.
that's the message he was trying to get across. When I watch NBA games today, and every single play there's a complaint over a dead ball. Like there's a complaint over a call. There's LeBron, Trey Young, Spencer Dinwiddie, everybody, every single play, and it does not stop. And that shit is annoying.
You know what's funny?
Well, even when they blatantly foul people, they go to the ref.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like every single play where it's like when you actually like go back and watch some of these games, there are games where dudes are not really barking at the refs like that.
They don't get at the refs like that, and they were a lot more coachable too.
Yeah,
but
I
the culture's
definitely
different.
agree.
Players know that they're in the driver's seat. They know that the coach can be let go. They know that if they get to refs enough, or if they sort of set a tone, you could become what Harden is, where you literally live off free throws.
We don't need any more James Harden.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he lives off free throws. And
no, I know, but Jesus Christ,
he's manipulated everything in a way that really benefits him, obviously.